Again, everybody. Good to see you guys. So far, we got Droid on panel. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing just fine. Thank you for having me, ma'am. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. May the Lord bless you this day.
Awesome. And Chow and Spider Monkey and Michael. I think those are the ones I've seen so far. Um, anyway, we're going to change some things up from now on. I mean, this is going to be, as I mentioned in the description, my last live stream for various reasons. Sundays aren't really that great for most people, at least in the US. It kind of breaks up the afternoon. And I've tried different days and times in the past, and it doesn't make much difference anyway. So I think the problem is when it comes to live streaming, there isn't that much interest on my channel for that sort of thing. So I will continue with the prophecy series. I will do the midpoint. It's like a half hour or so video pre-recorded, and then after that will be the bowls. And I'll also do one on the Star of Bethlehem before the end of the year. So the rest from now on will be uploads, normal video uploads. I think I'm going to try after first of the year to just upload like every Wednesday, and it may or may not stick to that. It depends on if I have something worthwhile to say. I might do the another tithing screed every once in a while because churches drive me nuts with, especially this time of year, uh, guilt tripping people on gift giving and tithing and all that nonsense. So anyway, that's what we're gonna do, and so I will still make videos. Like I said, there just won't be a live chat unless I feel like doing a premiere, but I don't get too many people at those either. So there, you can always comment under videos, and we can still, have some semblance of fellowship that way. So hopefully that won't be too disappointing or anything to all five of you who come. So, but anyway, a lot of people miss the live streams that wanted to be here and can't ever be here, and they watch it later anyway. So I think it'll be all right. Last time we did the seals, and that is a time that we're fast approaching, and it will be taking advantage, in my opinion, of the shock of the rapture and set up the official New World Order, which has already been being constructed in the shadows, so to speak. But now they can hardly keep the lid on it anymore. The evil is parading down Main Street, and um, the governments are all marching lockstep and making pretenses of wars and disagreements and things, but we know what's really going on beneath the surface. And of course, you can't give too many details or you get silenced and canceled. But at any rate, we know from the Bible what is predicted to happen. And after the seals on the seventh seal, we remember there's a half hour of silence, as you can see here on the screen. People debate over what that means, but at the very least, I think it sets apart the seals from the other judgments, which is one of the many reasons I believe it's before the actual signing of that 7-year treaty with Israel and by the Antichrist, and that's what starts the tribulation itself. So you can see up here in the top, if you can look at the chart that I have on the screen, it starts off under the white text black banner that says Jacob's trouble. It says 7-year covenant with Israel's government confirmed by the beast, and that starts it off. And the first judgment we have, you can see the list here, but I will quickly read that part of the chapter starting in verse 6 of chapter 8. It will be, first of all, hail, fire, and blood, and a third of the earth is burned. There will be a burning mountain thrown to the earth, and it turns a third of the sea to blood. Then wormwood comes and poisons a third of the fresh water sources. Then a third of the light of the moon and the stars are darkened. Then in chapter 9, it will start getting into the last three woes. The abyss is open, the locusts come out, they torment people for 5 months. Then there's another third. You'll see thirds all over the place in the trumpet judgments, which is why I disregard the theory that says the seals and the trumpets and the bowls are all the same thing. Well, there's different proportions, and there are some similarities and overlap, but we have to look at those differences. So the sixth trumpet, a third of the world dies, and that's sometime after the sixth trumpet is when the two witnesses who have been busy these 3.5 years are put to death, and then they rise again and are taken up to heaven. And then there's a great harvest of the earth. There are more signs, and that's when we see the abomination of desolation. So that's the quick overview. And then we have the text itself. Like I said, I'll read real quick. This is Revelation 8, starting in verse 6. Then the seven angels with the seven trumpets prepared to blow them. The first trumpet sounded, and there came hail and fire mixed with blood. It was thrown down to the earth, and a third of the earth, a third of the trees, and all the green grass was burned up. And we'll get to a commentary on this section after we read it. The second trumpet sounded, and a huge blazing mountain was thrown into the sea. A third of the sea became blood, a third of the sea creatures with souls died, interesting phrase, and a third of the ships disintegrated. That's what the Greek word means. The third trumpet sounded, and a huge star burning like a torch fell out of the sky, landing on a third of the streams and springs, so the freshwater sources. The star is called bitterness or wormwood. Wormwood is a bitter herb, and so you could either use the traditional word wormwood, or you could just use its meaning, which is bitterness. A third of the waters became poisonous, and many people died from drinking it. The fourth trumpet sounded, and a third of the sun, a third of the moon, and a third of the stars were struck with darkness, such that the light of both day and night was reduced by a third. Then I saw an eagle flying through the sky, and I heard it shout, "Woe, woe, woe upon the earth dwellers, because the trumpet blast about to be sounded by the remaining three angels." So let's look a little bit at this commentary that I put a link for. I think it's also in the description. I put it in the chat just a little bit ago. And it says, we note the similarity between the judgments found here and the physical, literal judgments which God poured out upon Egypt back when Israel was enslaved there. Indeed, Isaiah indicates that literal events future to his day would rival those of the Egyptian Exodus. And it says in Isaiah 11:15-16, the Lord will utterly destroy the tongue of the sea of Egypt. With his mighty hand, he will shake his fist over the river, that is to say, the Nile, and strike it in the seven streams and make men cross over dry shod. But wait, this already happened. Hold on. There will be a highway for the remnant of his people who will be left from Assyria, as it was for Israel in the day that he came up from the land of Egypt. So that phrase is telling us that even though up to that point, it sounded like just describing a past event where Israel crossed over the dry part, where that God made a dry path in the Red Sea. This says, no, I'm talking about something else that's going to happen that's just like that. And you can look back at what happened in Egypt for exactly what's going to happen. So this is not an allegory. It's not a spiritualized passage. It's saying, look at this actual thing that happened in history. It's going to happen again. And since Isaiah wrote this, it has not happened. Therefore, it's still future. And then they go on here. It says in the seventh plague that God sent upon the Egyptians on behalf of Israel, God sent hail. I wish those pop-ups would stop. Hail and fire mixed with the hail, so very heavy that there was none like it in all the land of Egypt since it became a nation. This judgment was sent on man, beast, and every herb of the field. Significantly, in the sounding of this angel, this trumpet, the same mix of fire and hail destroys a third of the trees and all the green grass, and this includes grain being grown for food. So everything that's called grasses, a third of it will be burned up. And this is very reminiscent of a plague of Egypt, but just as that was real, so also this will be real and physical and literal. And then it goes on to say, hail is often sent by God and judgment of a great size, inflicting severe damage. And they have many references here. In the seventh bowl judgment, when we're not going to get to in this video today, the hail weighs 1 talent, which is anywhere from, they have 75 to 88 pounds here. I've heard as high as 100. I don't care if they only weigh 50 pounds, they're going to be devastating because nobody's seen 50-pound hail fall from the sky. This is it goes on to say here, the hail was drawn from God's treasury of hail reserved for the day of battle and war, from Job 38:22. Under the law of Moses, the penalty for blasphemy and idolatry was stoning. During the tribulation period, the earth dwellers continue in blasphemy and idolatry. Perhaps this explained why God stones them with large hailstones. So, yes, it looks back at the plagues of Egypt, and no, it's not an allegory. And yes, it will happen again exactly like this. Only instead of just the land of Egypt, it will be a third of the earth. So, and then you can read in this commentary, has much more detail about the fire and what it means to be mingled with blood, which is, as far as we know, is not an allegory of something else. That literal blood or something that looks like it. It doesn't say something like blood, it says blood. And God can certainly do this. I mean, all of these things are miraculous because they're coming from God and aren't natural. And the third they have here, I'm just going to read this a little bit. Receiving the judgment perishes, a third of the trees burned up, a third of the earth burned, a third of the sea becomes blood, a third of the sea creatures and ships are destroyed, a third of the rivers are polluted, and a third of the sunlight, moonlight, and starlight. So everything is a third. And again, this shows that God does things in stages. He gives people chances at every step to turn and repent, so that no matter what else they suffer, they will at least know that they'll be in heaven when they die. So this is God being merciful, even in a time when a lot of people are begging God to come down and fix this place because it's gotten so bad, and it continues to get worse every day. So this is God doing that. And like I said, people will still hate him. They hate him for not intervening, and they hate him for intervening. There's just nothing that would please these people. But it says all the green grass. And the same word for green, chloros, is the same as the color of one of the four horses that we saw in the seals. So chloros is a pale green. So you can say it's a pale horse or a green horse or whatever. When people try to make them all natural horse colors, they're forgetting where they're reading these things. This is Revelation, and this is what John is describing. And certainly he knew about different colored horses. He could have used those words as, a white horse. White is not a problem, but the red horse he uses, instead of a color just meaning red, he uses fiery, puros. And then the chloros is the green pale horse, and we forgot the black horse, but that's not white and black are not controversial colors. But the other ones people try to make normal horse colors. But John certainly knew all the normal horse colors and didn't use them here. So I'm thinking that these are, when it says fiery, it means fiery, just like the chariot and horses that came to pick up Elijah in the Old Testament were of fire. So I don't have any reason to take it anything other than actual fire horse. And the same with the pale green horse. It's not some normal horse color. It's the symbol of death and decay. That's what it's all about. So there's all sorts of meanings you can look at here. And then as far as the great mountain, it says the text is careful to differentiate between a great mountain and something like a great mountain. The object itself is evidently not a mountain, nor is it said to erupt or spew into the ocean, as we might expect from a great volcanic disturbance. Instead, it is thrown into the sea by some agent, possibly an angel, although the text doesn't say. This could describe the impact of a large meteor burning upon entry to Earth's atmosphere from outer space, if you believe in that sort of thing. Or it could be something entirely supernatural. I'm going to go with that. I mean, when you think about it, Droid and I were just talking before the show about how no cosmological model can explain how it is that we see sunrise on the equinox at exactly 90 degrees, no matter how far north or how far south we are from the equator, where is the only place where the sun is 90 degrees overhead right then. It comes up due east. That makes sense. But way far north and way far south does not make sense that it's also seen at 90 degrees and sets at 270. So this is a mystery to me, and I think it's a mystery to anybody who's honest. And so there's miraculous things going on that we cannot explain, and we can't go there and examine them. or get outside the earth far enough to look back and see by anybody trustworthy. So whether this is some natural thing or something supernatural is, of course, anyone's guess, but I'm going to lean toward the supernatural here in the Bible and especially in Revelation with all the other supernatural things happening. Why not? Why pick out this or the horse color and say, well, these can't be supernatural. They must mean something else. I don't get that. It said in Jeremiah referred to Babylon as a destroying mountain, which God would make a burnt mountain in Jeremiah 51:25. Here it seems that God uses a destroying mountain in judgments which will ultimately overthrow Babylon. But this Babylon isn't the topic here yet. This is the third of the earth. So, and it has something to do with the waters. So it's something coming from God, just as the hail mixed with blood came from God. So also is this mountainous thing, this huge thing. And it says in the first plagues that God brought on Egypt when Moses and Aaron, this Aaron is Moses' brother, stretched forth his rod, all the waters of Egypt became blood. Here, as in Egypt, a literal judgment is in view because the result affects living creatures and even ships of the sea, which is weird. Something, whatever this is that happens to the water, makes the ships dissolve. That's what the primary meaning of the Greek word is, dissolve. Later in the pouring of the second bowl, all the sea will become blood as a dead man, which is a little bit more extreme. That is to say, it's separated into constituent parts. But anyway, they talk about the third bowl judgments and so forth and plagues of Egypt. Then the great star, I'm going to skip down to that in the or I almost said documentary. What I mean is to say commentary. And it says aster, that's the Greek word for any kind of luminary. And it says they're still trying to make normal sense of this, which I don't understand in a commentary of this caliber, meteor or asteroid. Who knows? The only place it was in the seals when it said the stars of the sky. Then we know what stars we're talking about. The bright things in the sky that aren't the sun and moon fall to the earth, like a fig tree dropping its figs. So he described what he saw there, and he said they were the stars of heaven, the stars of the sky. But they're saying that, they're just making a comparison with the word aster. And so, but you can't say it's most likely something else when it doesn't say that this is a natural thing that occurs in the sky. It comes, and the problem here is that the word for sky and heaven are exactly the same word. We don't know if it means heaven as in the supernatural place or heaven as in the heavens where the birds fly, the sky. It can mean either. And it doesn't even help if you were doing this in Hebrew. So take that as you will. But anyway, some suggest that it might be Satan, something, non-physical. I'm not going to spend time on that. Springs of water, like I said, indicates fresh water. And then they talk about wormwood from, I'm not going to try to pronounce the Latin stuff there, but it's meaning a bitter, dark green oil made from certain strong-smelling plants with white or yellow flowers. Alcoholic in effect, called wormwood from its use as a medicine to kill intestinal worms. So that's why they called it wormwood. Being a plant and being used to kill worms. And so, yet instead of being a medicine, this time it's a poison. Let's see, I just happened to glance at the chat. Chow says, I left a Bible study quiz live stream yesterday because the answer to what was the light on day one was the sun. You have got to be kidding me. Wow. And sometime maybe you can post a link to these places you go. I think it'd be fun to watch. Anyway, where were we? Wormwood. And then, some other applications of the word. And the fact that they specify that people die as well means that the trees and all the other things and the ships and everything are literal, and there's no need to interpret it as some kind of symbolic thing. made bitter is how I rendered it in my translation as poisonous, because that's the effect it has on people. Um, and it says the wormwood is essentially poisonous. I'm assuming they mean this wormwood, not wormwood in general, because that's a medicine. So, darkening the sun, moon, and stars, I don't care how that happens, it's supernatural in cause. Um, some Greek texts have angel rather than eagle flying through the sky. Doesn't matter. It's something flies in the sky and gives warning about the next three trumpet judgments of the seven, the final three. Anyway, the three woes, anytime something is repeated three times, it means something severe. So there's really, really bad stuff coming. And even though, as bad as they are going to be, the bowl judgments after that in the second half of the tribulation will be absolutely devastating. We have had a fourth in the seals, a third in the trumpets, but everything else suffers and dies in the bowl judgments. So it's 100% at that point. Um, so anyway, inhabitants of the earth, again, we mentioned, I think, briefly before, people dwelling on the earth who are of the earth, earthlings, earth dwellers, earth people, not as in opposition to space aliens, which don't exist, those are demons, but as opposition to heaven dwellers, which is safe people and, God and all the supernatural beings. So that's the first four trumpets. That's chapter 8. Before I move on to chapter 9, any comments or questions other than the ones I read out of the chat?
Just quickly, that absinthe can also be used as a hallucinogen, so it's a very short stretch to become a poison.
Yeah, it's interesting that it has all those properties too. A lot of medicines have that quote unquote side effect. Although I think the side effects of actual medicines are far different from these ridiculous pharmaceutical ads you see that say, "Oh, by the way, you might die or go blind," or you know, just little things that you might risk in taking this medicine for hay fever. And good to see more people in the chat. I've seen Nathan and LVA Paul. Good to see you guys. All right. Anything else about the first four trumpet judgments? I don't think I see anything. All right, but yeah, Chow, I would like to know if you can post links under the video of some of these places you go. I'd like to check them out, unless you think I probably shouldn't. All right, so fifth and sixth trumpets. This is Revelation 9, and I'm going to go ahead and make this commentary go to chapter 9. The fifth trumpet sounded, and I saw a star that had fallen out of the sky or heaven. You can read either meaning. I don't know. Nobody knows. And he was given the keys to the shaft of the abyss. When he opened the shaft, smoke went up from it like the smoke of a huge furnace, darkening the sun and the air. Out of the smoke to the earth came locusts, and they were given permission like that of the earth's scorpions. The locusts were told not to harm the pastures of the earth, as locusts normally do, nor anything green, nor any of the trees, but only those people who do not have the seal of God on their foreheads. And they were not allowed to kill them, these people without the seal, but only to torture them for 5 months. The torture was like the agony of a scorpion sting. And in those days, people will seek death but not find it. They will want to die, but death will elude them. The locusts resembled horses prepared for battle. On their heads, they had what looked like, pay attention to the look like, golden victor's crowns. They had faces like humans. Their hair was like, I'm going to keep emphasizing that, women's hair, so long and flowing, and their teeth were like lion's teeth. They wore body armor that seemed to be made of iron, and the sound of their wings was like many horses and chariots running into battle. The locusts had tails with stingers like scorpions, and the tails were allowed to harm people for 5 months. They had as king over them the angel or messenger of the abyss, whose name in Hebrew is Abaddon and in Greek Apollyon, and both of those names mean destroyer. So they have a king over them named Destroyer, which may or may not be Satan. Okay, sorry, I saw Chow's message there. His name is Corey, and his channel is Smart Christians Channel. literal, historical, grammatical, but obviously not consistent. Okay. And you, as a mod, you can post a link if you have one. So, anyway, let me go on here and read the rest of this before we look at the commentary. The first woe is gone, but look, there are still two to come after these things. The angel or eagle wasn't kidding when they said things were about to get real. The sixth trumpet sounded, and I heard a voice coming from the four projections on the golden altar before God. It told the sixth trumpeter, release the four angels confined to the great river Euphrates. So the four angels were released, having been prepared for this hour, day, month, and year to kill a third of mankind. The number of the cavalry troops was 200 million. I heard that number. Hold that thought, because people are going to say it's Eastern nations. No. This is how I perceived the horses and riders in my vision. They had body armor that was fiery red, deep blue, and bright yellow. The horses' heads were like lions' heads, and out of their mouths go fire and smoke and sulfur. From these three disasters, the fire, smoke, and the sulfur coming out of their mouths, a third of mankind was killed. The horses' power to kill is in their mouths and tails, because their tails are like serpents who inflict injury with their heads. The rest of mankind, who were not killed in these three disasters, refused to turn away from what they had done. They did not stop worshiping demons and idols of gold, silver, copper, stone, and wood, which cannot see or hear or walk around. Neither did they turn away from their murders, their drug-related sorceries, their sexual sins, or their thefts. So, first, I want to say before we go to the commentary, as I emphasized, pay attention to like and as. And these things are real. These are not just having a bad day kind of, there's going to be ups and downs in your spiritual walk. This is real stuff, real nightmare stuff. And John is trying hard to describe what he's seeing. And these 200 million, people made a big deal. If I have the right spot here, I think this is, let's see, where did I see 200 million? Or is that later? I might be getting it. I might have seen that from earlier. Or is that oh, okay, that's the cavalry troops of the second woe. So I was getting ahead of myself a little bit. Anyway, there's going to be real suffering for 5 months to anyone who is not turned to God by this point. The description of these locusts, they came out of the abyss. So they are supernatural beings of some sort. People want to say that these must be Apache helicopters, the military things. They can resemble and look in appearance and look and sound of what someone in the first century might describe as locusts, but they came out of the abyss. Now, one interesting idea might be, what if the abyss is at the South Pole where nobody's allowed to go and where weird things have been going on for who knows how long? What if they've been developing creatures or things like this with demonic help? You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, did you want to say something? I hear your microphone. It's making a bunch of noise.
Oh, no, ma'am. Just agreeing with you.
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of scratchy mic noises. Sorry. I don't know what the deal is today. But anyway, it says that, there's real suffering, and it's describing what they are looking like. But they come out of the abyss. We have to remember that overall. Body armor is, they could be describing some kind of new tech material. But no, space is not the abyss, because space, quote unquote, outer space, does not exist. It's a violation of the laws of entropy, where gas would escape into it, the gas being the air we breathe. So we can rule that one out, but it says it comes from the abyss, and it doesn't say the abyss is up. It says they come up out of the abyss, so the abyss must be down compared to where we walk. So anyway, their appearance description could be some kind of machinery that are being flown by something like human beings. We just don't know. I'm just saying what the description is. But their king is the angel of the abyss, called the destroyer. So that's what we know. And then the second woe is where it says the 200 million, and people said, "Oh, this must be the far eastern nations that could have somebody announced once that they had that many troops." But this is just cavalry troops, and it says they're released by the four angels who have been kept bound at the Euphrates for who knows how long. It's got to be thousands of years. That were, by description, these are fallen angels who were punished by having them sit there for thousands of years and wait for this moment to release this horde of 200 million troops, which I'm inclined to believe are supernatural, at least in some way. We know we have from from at least what we're told about UFO encounters that there may be demonic beings involved, but there may also be machinery involved of some sort. So this could be something like that, but all we know is it comes up from below us. Abyss is not just an absence of things, it is a cavern, a fathomless cavern. The Bible sometimes is rendered bottomless pit. It just means a vast area without limit, and it's a bad place to be. So there's also ideas about where the abyss might be, but we know it's beneath our feet somewhere. That's all the Bible tells us. And you can speculate all you would like about what these colors mean on the horses' heads and the body armor and all these things. But they can kill with their mouths and their tails, like a snake. Snake bites from the tail, and like biting or something with the mouth, whatever. But people see these awful things and suffer these awful things and still shake their fist at God, which is just unbelievable. That's the part that really is mystifying. Um, let's see. Chow says the question was asked at 9 minutes 45 seconds. Super chatted. The sun wasn't created until day. Okay, he's looking at the pop quiz. Sorry about that. Okay, yeah, I'll check that later. Thanks. I went to look at Revelation 9 here a little bit, and we're not going to read all of this. Obviously, there's such a lot of material on every single chapter. And it says the first two of the final three trumpets are sounded, releasing demonic judgments. There's no doubt about that. They're at least partially involved. Unlike the previous four judgments, these target people rather than natural systems. Even in the face of literal hell on earth, the earth dwellers continue in their ways and refuse to repent, which, as I said, is just the most bizarre thing. The fifth angel brings the first of the remaining three, so 5, 6, and 7. And as we've seen, it says here, once one departs from a literal interpretation of the text, there's almost no end to the speculation concerning the meaning of the text, which results. And the more unusual the description of the plague, as here, the more fanciful the speculation becomes. Although we describe the problems associated with the historicist interpretation elsewhere, we offer a small example of its fruits in interpreting this fifth trumpet, a demonstration of its inadequacies. So if someone is using an historicist interpretation, meaning this stuff has all happened before, and such as the French Revolution or something like that, or Nero, whatever, this demonstrates how it falls flat when it gets to Revelation. Here we see the quote, "By this, the fifth trumpet is predicted an event from which the world still trembles, the French Revolution. A sketch of the French Revolution, divested of the prejudices of both sides, shall now be given. This sketch unquestionably contains the substance of the French Revolution, yet it is the work of no living pen. It is 1700 years old." I don't know if you can make sense of that. Something called the ninth chapter of the Apocalypse, of that they're calling this ninth chapter of Revelation, and they're saying this is what we read there, but this is inspired by God. But by golly, it was the French Revolution. I'm pretty sure the French Revolution is laughingly not even close, not even the same world as anything that's being described here in Revelation 9. Rather than attempting to shoehorn what is related in this chapter into past historic events such as the French Revolution, they said revelation there, little funny typo. How much more productive to recognize a description of something the likes of which has never yet occurred, which Jesus said in the in the Olivet discourse, where he said it will be like nothing that has ever happened before or will ever happen again. The key, going back to here, the key to understanding the nature of the judgment associated with the fifth trumpet is found in the study of the source from whence the locust army, loosed by the fifth trumpet, comes and how they got there. Suffice it to say, it's not Frenchmen being held locked away in the bottomless pit. It's very bad demonic beings. And if they're not demons, they're fallen angels. Because, and I think that this commentary assumes that demons are fallen angels. I would make a distinction in that since many of the fallen angels have been held in Tartarus, which may or may not also be the abyss, and that the angel of the abyss is king over these and that they have been locked up there. And since we know demons have been active in human history, then I don't know how these are the same group. My personal opinion is that demons are the hybrid offspring of the sons of God, daughters of men from Genesis 6, and that they want to possess people and things and even animals because they miss having bodies from when they were the giants, the men of renown, so to speak, from Genesis 3 or Genesis 6. Yeah, I don't know if I said 3 or 6 before, but it's Genesis 6. Anyway, these are of the angel class of beings, fallen most likely. Whether they're demons or angels, we can't specify here because maybe not all demons were roaming the earth. Who knows? But I'm leaning towards fallen angels here. Anyway, the quote here is all about why they, more reasons to back up their view on this. The star fallen, that this star, they say, is that this star is not an astronomical body, but a person can be seen by reference to him and he. They have to be careful here because, again, when we're talking about Greek or Hebrew, we're talking about grammatical gender in an inflected language. And so you can't go by the English pronouns. And so if star happened to be a masculine pronoun, it would take masculine, or a masculine noun, it would take masculine pronouns. It doesn't mean it's a person, but it doesn't mean it's not a person, because as we know, the pneumos, the word for the Holy Spirit in the New Testament, is a neuter noun, and so it's properly rendered it, but it's disrespectful in English, so they usually pick he. But the point here is that only because they have to do they abandon the this must be meteors or something view that they've tried before. Why they don't look back at this and go, well, maybe all of it's supernatural, I don't know. It just baffles me that they don't see the switch here. Anyway, bottomless pit, it says, well, first it says, this star having previously fallen and now being in a fallen state is the full meaning of the tense of the Greek verb. John did not see the actual fall. At the time John saw the star, it had already fallen, just to make that point, because people will try to do a sequence without understanding the Greek grammar here and be led astray. So since the star had previously fallen, some suggest from the immediate context that it refers to the star of the third trumpet, which fell from heaven and is called wormwood. Whether this star fell in the events of the previous chapter, these pop-ups, they drive me nuts, or in the events recorded in subsequent chapter, starting in 12:9, the possibility exists that it could be Satan. If so, then the demonic locust, which he unleashes from the pit, they say demonic, I say fallen angels, whatever, may be what it's referred to in part when John records, woe to the inhabitants of the earth and the sea, for the devil has come down to you having great wrath because he knows he has a short time. It's interesting that John uses the term woe to describe the results of Satan's fall, which, while the star which falls here looses the first of three woes. Since Satan's tail, the tail of the dragon, drew a third of the stars of heaven and threw them to earth, that'll be seen in Revelation 12:4, and he himself is cast out of heaven. When Jesus' disciples reported their success at exorcising demons to Jesus, he said, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven, referring to the authority which they demonstrated over the powers of Satan's domain. So this is why this falling, we can't actually pinpoint the time, but we can know that by this point in Revelation, the star had already fallen. If this angel is Satan, then some see a further description of him as the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in Hebrew is Abaddon, but in Greek, Apollyon. It's impossible, excuse me, to be dogmatic on this point, for it's also possible that the star which opens the pit is some lesser principality than Satan himself, and the angel of the bottomless pit may be simply the highest ranking angel among the fallen angels in the pit prior to their having been loosed. So, anyway, people see these demons or fallen angels with their own eyes and still don't repent. Um, the authority was given to him, so he didn't have it in himself. So, this isn't Jesus, of course. The key to the bottomless pit, I've often said it, I suspect, pure speculation, that CERN is attempting to open the abyss early, but they won't have the key. So no matter what else trouble they may get into, and they invoked the said Hindu god Shiva, or god of destruction, goddess, I don't remember, of destruction, have a statue of that outside the facility, and did some really weird rituals when they opened the thing. Um, I don't think there's any doubt what their intentions are, whether or not they have a good cover story, just like any criminal organization that's really highly organized usually has a cover or a front for what's really going on, and they may do real business. In the same way, I think that it's possible that a lot of these things like CERN are actually trying to do some physics, maybe, but that's not their real purpose, and that's not where funding for those sorts of things comes from. So it says here the shaft of the abyss had been locked so that whoever was there could not escape. Now the star which had previously fallen is given the key to unlock whoever or whatever is there. Later, an angel will be given the same key with which to lock Satan within the same compartment for the duration of the millennial kingdom in Revelation 20. So this is the same place Satan will be held in prison for 1,000 years after the tribulation, and has a key and a shaft. So I'm pretty sure that these are fallen angels, all things considered, not just demons. But I'm not sure how much more I want to go over this because I got another chapter to do. But a lot of interesting stuff here if you want to get into that. And they talk about bottomless pit and the smoke that are rising, and then the locusts themselves. In the context of Joel, the prophet Joel, the army of God arrives in concert with the day of the Lord and eventually gives way to the judgment of the nations. Then the blessings of the Messianic kingdom, and this matches the order of events in the book of Revelation. The demonic plagues of this chapter are the first of those three stages. And yet, in Joel, if you read that, it says this army comes from the Lord. Whether it means he's sending evil entities to do his will, that kind of meaning, or it's his army that's coming at the end of the tribulation to just mow everybody down and establish Jesus' kingdom. Hard to say, but they're making a connection with Joel here. So anyway, he was given power because he didn't have it on his own, and they were given commands and so forth. Like I said, I just cannot go through all of this. There's just so much detail here. So let me look at the chat a little bit. And I'm hoping, Chow, if you could remember to also post these links under the video, because even though I have the chat on the screen, I don't know if the links would be live. They would be live in the chat replay when it's rendered in YouTube, but any other place else where I put this video, like I do my other channels, they won't be able to click on the links. So if you could post those, it would be awesome. And then maybe later I can, when I upload it to my other venues, I will be able to add those links to the description. Let's see, looking at more people in the chat. That's awesome. Let's see. Spider Monkey says Shiva is a stupid god. He literally cut off his son's head, and instead of replacing the head back, he replaced it with an elephant. Wow. Okay. But yeah, I'm sure I'm pretty confident in saying almost, if not all, the Hindu deities are pretty nasty beings. Anyway, anything else? Anything you'd like to say, Droid? Or Okay, so I heard your cat. That was funny.
Yeah, I'm always fighting with her. Uh, no, fascinating. Confusing, but fascinating. Please continue.
I'm sorry about the confusing part, but I don't know. I That's what the chart's for. It's like the too long didn't read.
Not
So,
your fault.
oh, it's my fault or not my
It's
fault?
not your. It's
Oh,
not your
okay,
fault. You didn't write it.
that's true. But we are supposed to study it, and there's a blessing for studying it. So, whatever, we'll just do that. Take any blessings we can get. So now we're on. Let's see, I want to go to chapter 10 because we got to do a little bit. Like we got to do chapter 11 also, and I want to get through this. So after the trumpets, um, let me see. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and do that because I want to make sure I don't get into the midpoint stuff. Really starts at chapter 12. So anyway, it says, "Then I saw another strong angel descending out of the sky. He had been clothed with a cloud, and there was a rainbow over his head. His face was like the sun, and his feet were like pillars of fire." Sounds kind of familiar, but this probably isn't him. We'll find out. In his right hand, he held a little open scroll. He's placed his right foot on the sea and his left on the land. He called out in a loud voice like the roar of a lion, and the seven thunders responded. And when they did, I intended to write it down, but I heard a voice from the sky saying, "Seal up what the seven thunders said and do not write it down." And at this point, I stop and go, "Thank you so much for telling us that we're not allowed to know what they said. You could have just not wrote down that part, but John was writing down what he was told to write and then said, well, then this happened." All right, verse 5. "Then the angel I had seen standing on the sea and the land lifted his right hand to the sky. He swore an oath to the eternal living one." And that right there is why I don't believe this is Jesus. Because unless he's swearing by himself, which it doesn't say here, which God can do and did do in the Old Testament. But "the living one who formed the sky, the earth, the sea, and all they contain, that there will be no more delay. In the day that the seventh angel sounds the trumpet, the secret of God will be completed, which is the good news he announced to his slaves, the prophets." So I was thinking, what didn't we do the seventh trumpet? No, the sixth trumpet had sounded, and now we're having this little interlude. "Then the voice I had heard from the sky spoke to me again and said, 'Go and take the open scroll from the hand of the angel standing on the sea and the land.' So I went to the angel and asked for the little scroll, and he replied, 'Take it and eat it. It will upset your belly, but it will taste as sweet as honey in your mouth.' So I took the little scroll out of his hand, ate it, and it did in fact taste as sweet as honey in my mouth, but upset my belly. Then he says to me, 'You must prophesy again concerning people groups, nations, language, and many kings.'" So that's fairly short, but we're going to take a quick look at chapter 10 here. It says the first six seals and first six trumpets are behind us. The seventh trumpet remains, which will contain the seven bowls, which should complete the judgments. In a way similar to which chapter 7 stood between the sixth and seventh seal, this chapter is placed between the sixth and seventh trumpets and sets the stage for the final one. It should be noted that the effects of the sixth trumpet may not yet be entirely complete, so we don't know if this is a gap between them or part of the sixth. For the second woe is only said to be passed after the ministry of the two witnesses in Revelation 11. So things are a little murky time-wise. Um, but the theme of this chapter, they said, this short little chapter, appears to be the declaration of God's intention and right to take possession of the earth, both land and sea, and fulfill all these other remaining prophecies. Then he talks about the angel. But like I mentioned, that sometimes God does affirm by himself. But in this context, I think it's less likely just because we already have the one on the throne and we have the lamb, and this angel is standing on the earth and the sea and looks up and raises his hand to heaven and swears by God. Um, so, kind of a different context than when God swore by himself about his blessing to Abraham. So, um, take it either way. I'm not going to say anybody's completely right or wrong on that, but I'm just giving you the possibilities. Um, anyway, they say here it is our view that this angel is not Christ, but a divine emissary whose great glory and declarative actions indicate he is acting in the authority of God and asserting the right and intention of God to reclaim the globe world in judgments which will follow. I hate that they use that term so much. Anyway, this angel represents Christ in a similar way to which the angel of Jehovah represented Jehovah in the Old Testament, but with an important difference. This angel is not divine. It doesn't say this is divine. So, and as like I said, the Lamb is already in heaven making stuff happen. Um, anyway, it gives some indications of his appearance that we've already seen. And the little scroll, the Bible doesn't tell us what it's about. But there is a similar book in Ezekiel, a little book or scroll, Ezekiel 3 1 and 2. Both Ezekiel and John are told to eat the book. Both books were sweet to the taste, but bitter in the stomach. And both books contain prophecy, which the prophet was to ingest and deliver to others. This book is little because it contains a relatively lesser portion of the overall prophetic content within the seven sealed scroll loosed by the Lamb. The contents of this little book are consumable and digestible by John, meaning, I guess, that he can understand it, whereas it's almost certain that he could never have ingested the full contents of the seven sealed scroll. So, speculations, but pretty good ones in my mind of what this means, this little scroll. And like the Lamb before the throne, this angel has a book in his hand. The Lamb's book is in his right hand, but this angel appears to hold this book in his left hand because while he's holding the book, he raises his right hand. So there are little differences always to pay attention to. And then they go into a lot of other detail about lions roaring and the seven thunders, seal up the things. Why did you tell us this? But oh well. And then the raising. There's just all this detail about what this being is doing. And I think most people, though, are less concerned with who's doing this as what it is about this little book. And I think the explanation we've been given here is pretty good. So I'm going to not go through the rest of the commentary on that chapter because we do need to get through 11 yet today. Any questions about the angel and the little scroll? I'm not sure. I haven't looked at the chat thoroughly yet, but I don't see anything about there.
It just kind of seems to me that if something is sweet to the mouth but bitter and bad for the tummy, that's something that people want. Yet it's like the word of God being a two-edged sword. Once they digest it, it cuts them to the quick. That's what it reminds me of.
It could very well be. Yeah, in one way or another, it is a message that should be good news. We could take it also from the perspective of the lost, where it's good news, but they take it wrong. They reject it. So there's all sorts of possibilities. But that's a good one too. Thanks. Let's see. Spider Monkey says there's even a chapter where we aren't revealed what it is that the angels chanted in Revelation. God told John not to write it, but can't remember. Okay. Alrighty. Now we're going to learn about the two witnesses. And that's the last chapter we're going to do today. It says, Then I was given a stick like a measuring rod and was told, Arise and measure the temple of God and the altar and all those worshiping at it, but leave out the outer court and don't measure it because it was given to the other nations who will trample the holy city for 42 months. And I will give my two witnesses the charge of prophesying for 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth. These witnesses, and we'll do commentary on this stuff, these witnesses are the two olive trees and the two lampstands set before the master of the earth. And if anyone decides to harm them, fire goes out from their mouths and consumes their enemies. This is how whoever decides to harm them must die. These two have permission to lock up the sky so it doesn't rain for as long as they prophesy, to turn the waters into blood, and to strike the earth with all kinds of disasters as often as they choose. And when they complete their testimony, the beast ascending out of the abyss will fight and conquer them and kill them. Pay attention to that. The beast ascending out of the abyss. Their corpses will lie in the main square of the city, which is figuratively called Sodom and Egypt. That is, where their master was crucified. People from every group and tribe and language among the nations gawk at their corpses for 3.5 days, refusing them burial. The earth dwellers gloat over them and even send gifts to each other because these two prophets had tormented them. But after 3.5 days, there's that number again, the Spirit of life from God entered into them, and they stood on their feet, and great fear fell upon those who watched. Then they heard a loud voice from the sky say to the two, "Come up here." And then they ascended into the sky in a cloud while their enemies watched. In that very hour, there was a great earthquake, and a tenth of the city collapsed. 7,000 individuals were killed, and the survivors were gripped with fear and finally gave honor to the God of heaven. The second woe has passed, but look, the third woe is coming rapidly. So we can see from this statement that everything happened as part of the second woe, that we weren't sure about the timing. And then the seventh trumpet sounded, and there were loud voices in the sky saying, "The kingdom of the world now belongs to our master and his Christ, who will reign forever." And I'll just stop to say, of course, those are lyrics that Handel's Messiah got from here. Verse 16, then the 24 elders sitting on the thrones before God fell down on their faces and worshiped God. "We thank you, O Master God Almighty, who is and who was, because you have taken your great power and assumed your reign. The nations were angry and your rage came, and now is the time for the dead to be judged, to repay your slaves, the prophets, and the small and the great who fear your name, and to ruin those who ruin the earth." Then the temple of God in heaven was opened so that the ark of the covenant could be seen inside. And there came lightning, rumblings, thunder, an earthquake, and large hail. So God is stoning people again, but lots of stuff in that one. I'm not going to read the part about the measuring stick. It's not really important to measure the temple of God, which must exist to be measured. And then altar and the people worship there. Omit the outer court, which was for the Gentiles, and it signifies the times of the Gentiles and their trampling of the holy city and the temple. The 42 months and the 1,260 days are all, of course, equivalent to 3.5 years. And since the two witnesses are killed at this point, the seventh trumpet, and have been busy for 3.5 years, then the seventh trumpet must be the midpoint. There's just no other choices. And it says they will tread the holy city underfoot. And we have many references here about how Jerusalem will be thrown into the hands of the forces of the beast. And when the abomination is set up just before they overrun the place, the faithful Jews will take off to a place prepared for them to be safe. And then the rest of them will suffer this fate of the trampling and all the terrible things that will happen to people who stayed. They say here it's interesting that the same root word, pateo, which denotes the trampling of the courts in Isaiah in the Septuagint, appears in this chapter to describe the treading underfoot of the holy city by the nations. Of course, the holy city is Jerusalem. Even though the nations occupy the holy city, it would seem that God's response to their activities may be akin to how he responded to the Jews when they offered sacrifices which appeared righteous externally, but when in fact their hearts were far from him. And of course, the 42 months they mention. The two witnesses, though, is where it gets a little more interesting. The TR text, they're talking about the Tectus Receptus, a family of Greek translations of the New Testament, indicates that it's an angel which is speaking to John, yet here the speaker speaks of the two witnesses as being his own. Either the angel is speaking in the first person for God, or the angel speaking to John is the second person of the Trinity, or the voice is that of God directly from the throne. We just don't know, but those are possibilities. These witnesses are said to be my witnesses, God said, because like the prophets who preceded them, they are dedicated to speaking forth his word and judgments as his servants. These are two witnesses because two is the number of witnesses prescribed by the law of Moses. Witness, marturian, or here it is, martursin, I can read it but not say it, from which we get the word martyr, which also is the word translated witness. We don't know which it is, and in many contexts it doesn't help us. It can be witness or martyr. But if they die, obviously they're martyrs. So anyway, these two witnesses or individuals will literally become martyrs. They will be killed for their faith. They cannot be killed until they finish their testimony. The same word, testimony, is what a witness does. The saints and even the angels are witnesses in the sense that they share the testimony of Jesus. The coming of the Holy Spirit on the day of Pentecost was to empower the church to be a witness to Jesus as well, because they witnessed all this coming on all these things that Jesus did. Since their ministry is reminiscent of Moses, plagues, etc., and Elijah, their message will undoubtedly be that of both the law and the prophets. That's their message. Okay? The Jewishness of this chapter, especially the ministry of these two witnesses, must be seen within the larger context of God's promises to restore Israel. In an important parallel passage, the Apostle Paul, boy, there's a bunch of P's there, anguishes over Israel's need of the gospel. I'm not going to read that right now. They are among the quote unquote beautiful feet of those that spread good news. Their ministry involves the entire earth, but takes place in Jerusalem and has all the markings of Jewish Old Testament prophets. Anyway, the interpretations here are all over the map. They use the term the legendary, from literal individuals such as the apostles James and Peter to symbolic ideas such as the church preaching Christ in the two testaments. I've heard those people today saying those things. These two are forks in the road of interpretation on the way to determining who these individuals might be. The first fork, which separates interpreters, is whether the text describes symbols, institutions, or individuals. I'm not going to bother going through the details. They're individuals by process of elimination because they're going to die and rise again, and people hated them. And the church is long gone, although there's been a fake church that nobody hates yet because they're in it. So this isn't the church. It isn't the Old and New Testaments. You can just easily rule those things out. So now they come to the second fork in the road, having established that the two witnesses are best understood as historic individuals. Who are they? The most popular suggestions include the return of Moses and Elijah, the return of Enoch and Elijah, because neither of them ever died physically, or two future prophets who minister in the power and character of Moses and Elijah. And they give reasons for and against, lots and lots of words there. And it says their ministry will be like that of John in that their prophecy will be worldwide in extent, for they shall not only prophesy, which includes correction and exhortation, but they shall also torment those who dwell on the earth. So people will hate them for that as well. My personal opinion is that, yes, these are individuals, but we can't say that only people who haven't died before can come back and finally die, because it is appointed for people to only die once and then face judgment. But appointed once ignores the fact that the Bible also says there will be some of us who are alive when Jesus comes and will be transformed without dying. So it isn't required that everyone die once, but without exception, but it's the norm, of course. But so because of that, with some of us being taken to heaven alive at the rapture, then we know that these don't have to be Enoch or Elijah. It's most likely that they are normal human beings who are given those prophetic ministries to do for this time. So anyway, you can read through the pros and cons and reach your own conclusion on that. The duration is the 3.5 years, and they rule out the latter part of the 70th week. That is to say, it can't be the second half, and they give reasons for that. Sackcloth is mourning and serious things. So they summarize these two witnesses are clothed in sackcloth, never seen an entity such as a church or a testament so described. They have a ministry, stupid pop-ups, have ministry matching that of previous Old Testament Jewish prophets, and they minister in Jerusalem. The testaments aren't limited to Jerusalem, neither are the church and Israel limited to Jerusalem. So again, those things are easily ruled out. These are individuals, and they will be in Jerusalem. So if somebody says, look over, here's the two witnesses, no, they are not in Jerusalem. They're not the two witnesses. So these factors, along with the absence of the church and the sealing of the 144,000 Jews, argue for the Jewishness of the two witnesses. And so because God never leaves the earth without some kind of representation, two witnesses of any sort. And now the olive trees aspect of that, and I know we're going over a little bit, but Israel is referred to by God as a green olive tree. The psalmist referred to himself, one who trusted in God's mercy, as a green olive tree in the house of God. But the two olive trees is intended to denote a specific pair. And they say that they're lampstands, and evidently, these 2 lampstands will serve a similar purpose to the 7 and the 7 churches. Um, let's see, Zechariah is shown a lampstand of solid gold with 7 pipes feeding 7 lamps. The lamps are fed by a shared bowl of oil, which stands between the 2 olive trees into which the oil from the tree drips. So you can read about that in Zechariah 4, 3, and 12, where it talks about 2 olive trees that are standing before the Lord of all the earth, and that they're fed by the same bowl of oil as what Zechariah sees. So Revelation is referring these 2, just as it referred to the 4 horses as 4 supernatural beings in the Old Testament that went out to do a patrol for God and come back and report. Um, so also, and they were some not the same 4 colors, by the way, but 4 horses nonetheless. And so we also have 2 olive trees in both testaments. So and then you can read more detail about all of that. The allusion back to Zechariah's visions is further proof of Jewishness of these individuals, but also underscores their function in bringing Israel toward the final restoration seen by Zechariah. The church age having come to a close before any of this, the focus has shifted back to Israel in preparation of a faithful nation suitable for the millennial kingdom. That's what all of this stuff is for. That's why it's happening, to clean up the earth and to purge Israel of unbelievers and to start over with the people of God and the righteous Gentiles, the faithful Gentiles, to repopulate the earth for the millennium. So, and they give out judgments, and they're going over the possibilities of literal and figurative. So anyway, we have the 2 witnesses, and then they're killed by the beast arising from the pit, when everybody, of course, is going to worship the beast because of that as well. And the beast will take credit for killing them, but when they rise, that's why people are horrified and go, wow, how did anyone overcome the beast? That's what they just witnessed, is the overcoming of the beast, because he killed these 2 witnesses, and then they came to life again and went up to heaven. So if that doesn't show people that this guy is not the real Christ or the real God, I don't know what would. Which is why things are so much more orders of magnitude horrible in the bowl judgments. And a great city, of course, is Jerusalem. That's outside of the city is where our Lord was crucified. Leaves no doubt as to what city it is. The people sent each other gifts. The devastation that's happened up to this point makes that difficult, but not impossible. Whereas at the end of the tribulation, it would be impossible for people to send each other gifts. That's just not going to happen then. So this is a midpoint event. The midpoint is where a lot of things come together. The beast arises. The devil is thrown down. The dragon is thrown out of heaven. Indwells the beast, raises it from the dead, subdues 3 kings, and then they are, the beast also kills these 2 witnesses. So this is what I have in my chart here. All this stuff that happens in this kind of a tan bar in the middle between the trumpets and the bowls. And there's also going to be a great harvest of the earth and all sorts of things. And that indicates a lot of people dying during this time. So I know there's a lot we're leaving out, and then I'm leaving a lot to you to read, but we can't possibly just march through all this. And I don't see the point of reading to you. I see the point of hitting the highlights. And I will do the bowl judgments in an uploaded video later this month. It probably will be this week even. And then I will, like I said, I will do one on the Star of Bethlehem. And first of the year, we'll see what happens. But as I said, there won't be any more live streams at all. And I may or may not do an occasional premiere. I don't know when or if, but I will put up some videos. So be encouraged to keep watching the videos and commenting in the comments under the videos, because you can do that every place I upload it. So I think that will be the best thing going forward. Anything else? This is your big chance in the last live stream to speak. Anything you want to say in a live stream chat? Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say I appreciate you so much, Paula. I thank you for the work you've done and the mind the Lord has given you to research these things, and to try to educate us folks who don't know. um,
Even though I
you
confuse the heck out of you.
no, I think you actually make it less muddy. So,
Okay. Well, of course, this is anything that gets clearer is God's doing, because I'm just reading stuff, and that's each of us doing what we're gifted to do is how this is supposed to work. And I have always really appreciated you just being here. Has been hard to find anybody that can be on panel consistently, and so I feel bad about ending it for that reason. But at the same time, um, we've already talked about all the pros and cons and so forth, but you, you were also, very much appreciated for being a mod in the chat, and you and Chow and all the other mods, and I think Mike was here earlier, and anybody else in the live chat that I missed. Always appreciated all of you coming, and even though it's like maybe 10 people, I don't know what today's numbers are. I don't look while I'm doing the thing. So yeah, everybody's appreciated who came. Do post links wherever you want to watch these. And as I said, I've got there's a master link in the description where you can see all the other places I post these, and try to support whoever else might be doing Christian live streams in the future. Try to support them, because it does make a difference. Um, that I wish Christians would hang around together as people do on a lot of other topics, where they just are are can't wait for the next live stream and to be with the people. And I'm just not seeing that among anybody, in any great numbers in Christianity, and it's really kind of depressing. But I'm very grateful for you guys. I'm sure God will bless you for having the kindness to come. And again, in the future with uploaded videos, people can watch them at their leisure, whatever works for them, and still comment under the videos, and still have fellowship that way. So, all right. Thanks again. I think we'll call it a day, and look for more uploads in the future. So if you're not subscribed, that hopefully you'll get notifications. I can't promise, because YouTube is very unreliable in that regard. Um, as far as I know, they work well on other platforms, but that's the way it is. And keep looking up. Um, God bless everybody, and we'll see you somewhere. Thanks again.